Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. And afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and share their knowledge and experience with you. I hope you enjoy it. It's beeping right now. Right on, Leslie. Welcome back. Thanks for being with me. How you doing, my dear?
I'm doing great. So glad to be here and seeing how your hair is different and mine's different. We have a new lease on life and a new style too.
Absolutely. And that's gonna be my style from now on. It's much easier. And I had it up to here every single time before I do an episode. Or when I go to work, I have to put some gel on it and everything to look a little bit like I like that's enough. That's enough. One of the guys from the office, because they kind of like used to it now, but not exactly. Like you look like a super villain now. Like, okay, well then don't talk to me. Send me. I'm totally fine with that.
That's okay. It brings attention to your eyes, which are very beautiful.
Thank you. That was my biggest issue when I first started the channel because my skin is ridiculously pale. And I lived back then in one of the sunniest places in the city. And when I put the laptop, the first episode I tried, and the sun is right in front of me, and you could only see an eyebrows. Not now. That were the two eyebrows asking three questions. I was like, you know what? Nah, let's do it another time when I find a nice place.
Well, it's great now. We're perfectly set up.
Right on. And with that said, you're an amazing author with amazing books and amazing reviews. And I wanted to know more about the writing process. And my first question is, how do you know when you're writing something, when you're writing a book, an article, whatever it is, what to add and what to remove?
You know what? It's so interesting that you asked this question. It's a very good question. It's a simple question. And the answer is
Yeah.
very, very simple. Is what you're writing and what you're saying helpful to the reader? Is it going to help them understand something? Is it going to help them imagine something? Is it going to set something up for them? So down the road, as they continue reading, it's going to build for them. So you have to imagine that when you're writing a book or when you're writing anything, it could be an email, it could be a presentation, it could be a dissertation, you're creating brick by brick a path. It's like a garden path, if you will. And so you're building this world with your words, but the path is the words and the foundation. So if you don't have a helpful pathway that's going to elucidate and break up your ideas brick by brick, then you're not going to be a helpful writer. Everything that you do as a writer is either teaching somebody, painting a picture, illustrating something. So always ask yourself, is what I am saying helpful? And when I say helpful, is it helping the reader make sense of what I'm saying? Is it helping them to understand something? Is it helping them to clarify any confusion? Or is it painting a picture for them that's going to be useful down the road? And you can apply this to self-help books or you can apply it to fiction books as well.
My career started in the government sector. And over there, I learned a very useful skill that I almost never use it, but I sometimes do. And that's the opposite of what you just said, like how to make complicated, as stupid, and as useless as possible, as humanly possible. You gotta write this email or this document so stupid that even you won't be able to read it or understand it in about a week. That and it should be like around 200 pages.
You know, that's so funny because even in legal writing, there's two schools to make it so abstract and so difficult and confusing that it literally throws a wrench in progress.
Yeah.
Or there's another saying in legal writing, which is one of my favorites, and I throw it around all the time, is if it reads easy, it wrote hard. It means that the burden, the onus is on the writer. It's the onus is on the communicator. And you need to write in such a way that when somebody reads something, it's just so easy. It's smooth
Yeah.
like butter.
My next question is, how do you know when it's done, what you've written is a finished product? And what, because I'm sure you've been in that situation. You have a finished product, the book's published. What do you do if something pops out like immediately after the book is published? Like, I should have put in that there.
Well, you know, from a trade point of view, you're an author, and I think I'll kind of take it step back. Let's go a little bit bigger picture. Being an author is a part of a business. It is a part of a business. A book is a
Yeah.
part of your business plan. And so if you are a coach like me or a professional or an expert in something, a book is a tool that you're using to help somebody understand something that's very nebulous and abstract, and you're putting it into concrete terms that somebody can use to apply to a particular field of subject matter. Okay. And if you don't get everything in, then you put it in your website, you put it in your blog, you put it in your newsletters, you put it in your reels or your stories, you put it in your speeches when people hire you to come and speak, and then you expand on that. So, from a business point of view, there's always opportunity for additional ideas to come forward. I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that the whole point, is to
Yeah.
inspire more ideas? But from a feeling, I always just get this intuitive sense, which comes from the artist point of view. You always get this feeling that there's nothing more that I can say. It's like it's done. You in an arting, I studied art, I studied drawing with Nofa Dixon at University of North Florida. And what she says is you use the whole canvas, you use the whole piece of paper. Well, the book is your canvas too. And of course, you continue ad nauseum and write War and Peace, right? But you're really going, okay, I've filled it up and I've said everything I needed to say. I've given birth to this baby. You kind of get this sense as a writer when you're done. And I think you have to kind of trust that process.
That's pretty like trusting your instincts.
You have
And
to.
that's like an instinct you kind of like develop when you're writing or when you've written a certain amount of books.
Yeah, it is. I think writing is a craft. It's an art. It's a skill. It's very
The
technical
talent.
as well. So there's you're using two sides of your brain, but when you are creating something, for me, having had two children, like when you give birth to something, you kind of know when there's nothing left in there.
Fair
And
enough.
so I just feel like if you've been writing for me like 25 years, like you just kind of know when it's like I've said everything I needed to say and it's done.
Just like last time when you said that, and I said that you don't even look 25 yourself, so I'm gonna say it again.
Thank you. I love you for it. That's why I keep coming back.
It is what it is. And this January, I was in that situation. This, I think, kind of why I want to ask the third question. How do you avoid covering the same topic over and over the books, in different books? Because in the end of the day, there's so much things we can talk about. And the reason I'm asking is because I was in that situation, and January was a heavy month. I'm in the infrastructure business. And I had to talk to a lot of carriers. And one time I was like, I was calling them. Well, as we talked last week about that, and they said, what are you talking about? That's the first time I'm calling you. Because it's always the same problem. And it was kind of a blur because there were a lot of things I had to cover. Like, yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I kind of swept under the rug, but it was a bit stupid. So like, you know what? I should ask someone smarter about this. So.
It
Because
was
yeah,
fun.
you know what I mean. Like, how do you avoid putting your point there, but not covering the whole thing?
I think it kind of goes back even to your last question. I mean, if you find that more ideas come from the same vein of ideas, same concept, it's okay to expand on them in further books. I have, for example, one of my favorite metaphysical authors is Neville Goddard, and he wrote a lot of little books, and a lot of them he repeated a lot of things. And I think when you become a scholar in a particular field, or if you're trying to learn something and you're building a base and you're trying to expand on that, I don't think that repetition is too bad. I think and especially if you are a fan of somebody's particular book and they're a subject matter expert and they're trying to expand on an abstract idea to help you make it more concrete, I think as a writer, it's okay. But then on the other hand, I'll also make commentary there that there are some people who just regurgitate the same stuff over and over, like it's Fox News or something. It's the same talking points over and over. I think if you're from a craft point of view, if you're not taking a reader from here to there and helping them change, and from there helping them change, even if you're repeating some similar principles, if you're not helping somebody to make forward progress, that's your sign to say, I'm just repeating the same crap over and over again. And I'm not really helping to make positive change. I'm just using this to just buy time. And I think if you are a reader
Like the
and
filler.
you Yeah, and you read and you see like somebody's subject matter and you're reading the same stuff and it's just regurgitated over and over. You just know, and
Yeah.
then you lose connection with your audience. So always keep it fresh. I think you're always going to have the same similar messages like freedom and liberty and prosperity and these types of things, but always keep it fresh and keep it timely. And my final point with that is keep it applicable to whatever it is that people are going through today, their issues today. Is this helping us today? Okay, bring it back. But if it's not, it's just repeating something from yesterday, then toss it aside.
Pretty good. My fourth question is, and again, not an insult, but let's be honest, people don't read a lot these days. So how do you know as an author how long should the book or the text be? And the reason I'm asking is because every 2 or 3 years I am trying with very good intentions to read The Lord of the Rings. And I'm not going to because if you give me a call and say, hey Danny, I'm in the forest, I know what you look like and I've seen a forest before, so I can picture. You don't need to put 20 pages down so that there's plain what a forest. I know what a forest is. I've read Tolstoy, those books here, and it was punishment. I felt like I was an overseer of a concentration camp in my past life, and now I have to amend for those sins because it's ridiculous. The imperial officer of the Russian army, that was before the revolution, has a white jacket, black pants, black boots. There's a yellow stripe on each, leg, pants at the side, and that's it. And I pretty much explained how that officer looks like in 2 sentences. This guy needed 30 pages. I mean, at some point, it's ridiculous. I understand that, it's not fair to judge someone who wrote something about 150, 60 years ago, because back then, I assume the speech was different, but there's no way in the world someone can convince me that writing all that stuff is like a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I read and I know I'm missing a lot. They're amazing books, and they're actually pretty good. I just hate the way they're written. So how do you
Mhm.
know, how long a text should be?
It's so interesting that you say that because I was in a book club when I lived in Vista, California. I was in a book club, and every month we would read trade books. So they were just, kind of like mass publication. And so many of them were terrible. Even if they were bestsellers and everybody lauded the authors, you could just freaking tell it was just written just for mass consumption. It was not high quality writing and it would irritate the hell out of me. And I would just
Good
skim
food
at
for
certain
books.
points. Yeah, because, and the thing is I'm a kind of a different audience. I went to law school. So I have to read the most annoying things that are just so verbose and so confusing and old English. And I had to sit there for hours, right? But then sometimes you get nuggets of good writing where it's beautiful and it's moving and it illustrates it and it hammers these ideas in a practical way. And you're like, yes, let's change. Let's do this, right? And so you get these few nuggets, right? And so my patience for bad writing has gone nil. I don't have any patience. So I get what you're saying. I think that just comes from being a reader and somebody who appreciates good writing. Okay. And my friend Will Sterling, he wrote a book and it was about a book in Hollywood and he wrote it kind of like in just kind of sections and it went by really fast and it was a fast read. Would I say it was the best, actual writing and grammar in the world? No, I wouldn't say that, but it was interesting and it painted pictures
Yeah,
and it moved you along. And I think sometimes it's not always about the writing. Sometimes it's about the subject matter and the drama and the story. And of course, he is a screenwriter and he made movies and he's doing
pretty good.
extremely well. But it's true. I point to this because it's about how we consume media these days. And I think Will got that. I think Will gets that. I wrote La Liberación, which is a very spicy feminist romance novel, very sexually graphic, very, very feminist. And I wrote it in such a way that the chapters are short, like a movie scene. Okay. And it takes like maybe not even a few minutes to read a chapter.
I'm
It
losing the voice a little bit.
it takes a few minutes to read a chapter. Okay.
Okay.
And so I wrote it because my husband has severe ADHD. And so he can't maintain attention span. So I wrote it in a way that he would like it. And
Sweet.
it goes by very fast. Now, I'm going to show you a book. And oddly enough, it's interesting. But my friend wrote this one, G.J. Studemar. He wrote Murder Baby. It is long. If you pick up the audiobook, it's 26 hours.
Wow.
And it's so beautiful. The writing is so good. It's taking me a long time to read it because the descriptions are so good and so interesting that you want to take it slow. So I think it depends on the author. I think it depends on your audience. I think as a writer, you should know who your audience is. I think that's your job. So I would actually say it really depends on what your subject matter is. I think it depends on who your audience is, and I think it depends on you as well, what you're trying to illustrate and what you're trying to consume. I don't think Tolstoy would do well today. I just don't think so.
No.
You know what I mean? Even C.S. Lewis. I think the reason why C.S. Lewis and all these things did so well is because it was so fantastical. I just don't know if it would do so well today. You know, and even one more point I'll bring before you ask the next question is even cookbooks, Julia Child, the art, mastering the art of French cooking. There's a million cooks like that. She opened the door for that, but the way she presented the material, which was the world and the culture of French cooking, and made it very easy for the American cook to cook it was genius. So I really think you need to know your subject matter. You need to know who's reading it. And you also need to understand like what you're trying to say it in a way that is very succinct and structure it and package it really well because the package matters today in the publishing world.
We we are changing, there's no question about it. You know, some things that were appropriate back then are not appropriate now. But in general, that's not really the core essence. Like, I remember it was about 20 years ago, maybe even more. They've published a translation of a clay tablet from Iran, and it
Mm-hmm.
was 6,000 years old. And back then they didn't have church, you know, 'cause Christ wasn't born back then. They had ziggurats. And in
Hmm.
ziggurat there was pretty much a high priest, and you go over there for advice and so on and so forth. And they've published it saying that a man is sending this tablet to the priest asking for help because his son doesn't work, spoiled him. He drinks a lot of wine and chases a lot of women, and he's worried about that. And my father showed me that the article about 20 years ago. I said, see, we haven't changed that much. And it was ridiculously short and very compact. And it was, granted, it's a clay tablet, so you cannot, you know, just write the whole thing. But in general, that's how people talk. I will forever love Treasure Island, although it's a kid's book. It's just written the way I love to read. The White Fang is, I think, the correct translation of Jack London.
Mhm.
Again, pretty sweet book. And there's an extended version and a little bit of a shortened version. I've read both of them, and I like both of them. So, yes, we are changing, but there are things about us that are universal, that they will never
Mhm.
change. And,
Yes.
and like, I don't, if this has been so long, I don't even remember if it's a book or just a very long text. It was about King Arthur and his knights. And one of the knights was fighting someone, I don't remember. So they had to have three fights. And they literally copy pasted it. Like the whole thing was just there. I was reading, I'm pretty sure I've read that already. And it was just, I don't think it was even poor translation. I think it was just the way the whole text was written. But yeah, it's just and you're right about that. You really need to know who you're aiming this at. Like for example, I am 100% certain that a lot of authors simply hate children in high school and they want to punish them with those texts so that they have to read it. That's a theory that, of course, I cannot prove, but I will keep on saying it.
It's like Shakespeare, like I love Shakespeare's themes, but oh my God, the literal language, like that was hard, but it reaches
I
to those
know.
themes. Yeah, so then for me, having grown up in the American South and living in working poverty and living amongst Black people who helped to raise me and love me and taught me how to sing and music and write and all these things, some of the pieces that I really enjoyed, were Raisin in the Sun. I know where the Caged Bird sings, but Maya Angelou, like even Death of a Salesman. Like some of these things speaks to a cultural experience. It
Yeah.
speaks to your life. It speaks to the mood of the times and your feelings. And I think that that's why writing in its various forms are essential because it speaks to something inside of you that you're going through. And it could be in a variety of mediums. It could be through fiction, or it could be through something more literal, like, a self-help book.
No, no, absolutely. And this is very important when it's about a specific culture. Oh, I forgot the name of the actor. It was so I'll remember the name shortly. I hope so. But Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington was the actor I was, and he was interviewed, and the interviewer said something about, okay, but why did this person directed the movie? And he said it's a cultural thing. You have to grow up in that culture to understand it so that you can present it in a proper way. Like Francis Ford Coppola is an amazing director, clearly brilliant,
Yeah.
genius. But he wouldn't be able to make the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
It's about the culture. This man, he's from way back. I don't even know if Coppola is alive today, but you have to have the culture within you, and then from there you can present. But if you don't have it, no matter how brilliant you are, you're just not gonna do a good job because you don't have it in you.
That's true. I mean, in La Liberación, I talk about, Polynesian cultures. She's in Tahiti, but also French culture, and myself being multiracial and having grown up globally and all over the world I've lived. You speak from that. It does, in a way, your experience really affects your viewpoint
Yep.
and what you're trying to say. And it also awakens you to either injustices or just kind of things that don't make sense or logical fallacies in society. And it helps you to make sense of all of them. And it helps you to process things. I know when um, Gabe was writing this one, he said it was like all of these characters was his baby, and it helped him process a lot of his own trauma. So writing can be not just for the reader, it could be for you to help heal something, make sense of something. So reading and writing is such an amazing thing. So I'm glad that you're actually doing this podcast on the craft of writing.
Yeah. Well, I had a few writers, and I was just super impressed. I like, okay, there's no way I can be the only one that impressed. So, and turns out I wasn't because a lot of people actually like that.
Yeah.
I have a fifth question, and
Okay.
you kind of covered it, but using some specific methods. What kind of a method do you use to grab the attention of the reader? You did mention that the novel that you wrote, that even your husband will be grabbed by it, he'll pay attention when he's reading. But what methods do you use when you're in that situation?
That's a really good question. For me, I'm such an intuitive writer. I just write. I think I'll take a step back and I'll say that as a writer, you are living through something, you're experiencing something, or you're imagining something, or you're receiving images. A lot of writers say that, for me, La Liberación was just pre-written, and I would just sit down at my desk and I would just put my hands on the keyboard and I would start to receive images and start to experience what the characters were experiencing and seeing from their point of view. And I would literally be like just transcribing what I experienced. And so that for me, I think if you are a writer, if you write music like Mozart and Beethoven, all these things, these great the music was already written. I just transcribed
Yeah.
it and brought it out. I think there was that spiritual point of view and writing. Um, but from a technical point of view, you always want to set the scene. You really want to set the scene. Where are you? It doesn't have to be like there were 6 shades of green on the leaves. It could be, I just always say, if you are writing a novel, you really want to think about the senses. What am I smelling? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? Am I feeling the rumbling of the ship, the motor? Am I hearing the rustling of the leaves, the crunching of the twigs below me? Do I feel the wind swirling around me? Do I see the twinkling of the lights? So paint the picture with words. And if it helps anybody who's listening to this, paint the picture as if a person who cannot see, who cannot hear, who cannot touch, who is just formless, shapeless awareness, then you're painting a world for them and make it real for them and really give it to them. And then you could take them into what the person, the characters are thinking, what they're feeling. And when you're talking about a character and what they're feeling, don't say he was angry. Say the blood rushed to his head and the heat was radiating from his face. Oh, we know how that feels when pissed
Pretty
off, right?
good.
So those are the types of things that you want to create in your words is these descriptions. Sometimes in self-help, you want to be really almost pedantic where you're breaking it down. But when you're writing a novel or fiction, you want to paint the picture. It's a chance to be more imaginative and more experiential in your writing. And it's more fun, I think. But I just say paint the picture for someone who doesn't have the senses, engage the senses. And if you do really well, and as somebody who writes, romance. If you do very well engaging the senses and the imagination, girls, you can feel it. You can feel it.
I agree so much with that. I'm gonna have to go back to the treasure island. And it was pretty much in the beginning, and there was this pirate called Black Dog, I think, or something, I don't remember, but he attacked Captain Flint. And just like his Captain Flint's eyes turned red, pull out the sword, and he chased Black Dog. And before he cut him with the sword, there was a sign of the pub that he was in, so he hit the sign, and the sword remains there. And even now, when you go into that pub, you can see the chop when Captain Flint hit that. And it was written, I'm not just not doing it justice saying it like that, because it was written so fine that every now and then when I think about something like that, when I see that kind of a sign, I'm just imagining Captain Flint swinging a sword. I remember that the first time when I was reading it, I literally looked up reading about a sign that was up. Like, wow. And yeah, it was, and I loved when you said that you pretty much start writing it, and it's like a reflex for you. As I don't even know if it's real or not, but I assume it is. When they asked Michelangelo how'd you make David, do you know the story?
Which one? Which David?
The statue of David by
Oh,
Michelangelo.
oh no,
And
I don't know. I don't think I know that. Tell me.
he said I actually did because he did that sculpture late in his career.
Okay.
He was already pretty famous. And when they asked like how did because it's remarkable even now it's something
Yeah.
no one can do. He said actually I didn't because the moment I just saw the block I knew he was there and I just had to remove what wasn't. And
Yeah.
you know that's a type of talent I think because I'm religious so I'm gonna say it's from God. But because that's
Yeah.
the only explanation that I have. But you either have it or you don't. And I love it when you said that, you just sit there and you start writing and like it writes itself.
Yes, it does. I think you have to really like surrender yourself to the craft. You have to be, I say, an instrument of love. I write about that in Engineering Your Moon, but it goes even further. It's like, how do you make the world a better place, And Joel Goldsmith, who was a great metaphysical teacher, he says God does all the work, right? He always says God does all the work. Okay. But I always say to my students and my mentees when I teach them intuitive skills and these types of things, I always say God does all the work, but through who? Us, baby.
Yeah.
So where do all the good books come from? Where does all the music come from? Where does the art come from? Where does the science come from? Where does the engineering come from? Yeah, I think it does come from God. I think it
Yeah,
comes
but
from this
what?
universal intelligence through us. It comes, and we have to be instruments and vessels for that creativity to come forward and make the world a beautiful place and bring heaven on earth.
Couldn't agree more. I've always loved talking to people like you and other writers and musicians because you guys just kind of have it in you. Like I don't. You know that feeling when you hear a beautiful song and a tear comes up? I don't have it. But it's a good song. I'll probably dance on it a little bit. That's about it. And that amazing feeling when you see the sunrise or the sunset. I couldn't care less about the summer. The only thing that I care about because I like working out in the morning. So, what I see is reason. Okay, so it's time for me to work out. And that's about it. I don't have it in me. I don't know if I've said it here or elsewhere, but I was at a museum a while ago. I was a kid, I was with my mom, and there was this beautiful picture. Everyone said it's beautiful, so it must have been. I didn't saw it that way. Like, and the painter, a pretty fun guy actually. Grady Size, his name. And he said, look at that. It was a forest. Like, don't you have the feeling that you want to go into the forest? I like, there might be a snake there. Why would I go there?
I think we need to tap you more into the romantic side of yourself, my friend.
How are you gonna tap something into something that doesn't exist? You either have it or you don't want to have it. What?
Oh, come on now. Come on. I think it's in there somewhere.
I've read a joke, and it's pretty hilarious, but some people funny. A woman calling her boyfriend said, "You swine, pig. You sent me 101 roses for Saint Valentine, uh, and you put it like that so that I get to pay for them for delivery." And he said, well, I've asked you what you want. You said roses. I asked you how expensive you want, and then you said, well, the price doesn't matter. There you have it, 101 roses for Saint Valentine, and the price doesn't matter now.
For him.
Well,
You're
that's
so
why you gotta
silly.
clarify.
I would not suggest anyone who's listening to do that.
Yeah, no, it's if you expect something from that relationship, it ain't gonna end well like that.
You're so
And with
funny.
that said, Leslie, as always, an absolute pleasure to be with you, to talk to you again. Let me think of something else. It will pop up, and we can even do a third episode.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Denny. I'm so glad that you're doing good and I had so much fun. And whoever's listening, I really hope that you enjoy writing and reading as much as Denny and I do.
Right on. Uh,
Bye.
Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Gap, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.